You ever asked yourself what the Spider-Man movies would be like if they were just movies about the Beatles? You haven't? Well, it actually doesn't matter. Here's some law that would make this work. So, sometime in the 90s, Sony would make a deal with Apple Corps Limited to make Beatles movies that have the Beatles in them. They're not actually the Beatles, they're like robot CGI versions of them. But it's basically the Beatles, and no one knew until like around this time in the universe where this would happen. So the Beatles movies would all start in 2002 with The Beatles, which would just basically be A Hard Day's Night all over again. Just A Hard Day's Night with some modern technology added into it and some new Beatles songs that would have came out after that original movie came out, and the plot's all the same. Some of the songs are the same, and then there'll probably be like a re-release of A Hard Day's Night during that time that it would come out. So yeah, and the same thing for the Beatles too. It's just a remastered version of Help with some new songs that would come out after the movie came out. Like, I know some songs from Anthology after the album and stuff, like later era Beatles songs. And then they'll do like a re-release of the album, maybe even the US version. And it'll probably be really good. People would call it the best Beatles movie. Yeah, I don't really know what to say about The Beatles 3, but like the equivalents of everyone is there. We have the equivalent of Venom is the Ruttles. I was gonna go with Oasis, but nah. And, the Beatles are Spider-Man. And yeah, you can make up some plot like they were doing like a competition or something. You can go into the comments and make up a plot. But it has to be like Spider-Man 3 though, like at least something like it. The Beatles 3 made the most money out of all the Beatles movies that came out before, but the director said that he wanted to do another one because he thought that the Beatles 3 wasn't really that good. But then Sony just let him do it, but they also said that we want to do a reboot. So then he couldn't think of a script, he couldn't get a story in time, so then the Beatles 4 was scrapped, and then we go to the reboot, the Fab Beatles. The Fab Beatles would take a darker tone, unlike all the other Beatles movies. It would feel like you're in the room as the drama and everything is happening. It got a mixed reception because the Beatles got a little change to make look a little more like each other, like the real person counterpart, but everybody was like, we actually like the first ones that you guys made, but they didn't care. They still went with it until the second one though. So in 2014, the Fab Beatles 2 came out, and it got a mixed reception, but not as mixed. It got like way more mixed as like the second one came out, because like people hated it. Like, people hated the story. Everyone could agree on that. But some people liked the CGI that they did on the Beatles, because like they mixed the Beatles from the first trilogy and the first one of the Fab Beatles together, and it looked pretty cool. But they didn't get enough money, and the director who made the Fab Beatles couldn't show up to something to announce the third one. And also, they were gonna put the Fab Beatles into the MCU. Not the MCU, like as in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the music Cinematic Universe. But since the director was lousy and couldn't get to this press event to announce the third one, they went to do Plan 2. Sony's plan worked. They finally managed to get the Beatles in the music cinematic universe. And their plan was to get the Beatles in some crossover films and a trilogy of solo films. And the first one of these was called The Beatles, The Ed Sullivan Show, which would show their journey from Liverpool to the Ed Sullivan Show to perform. And it will feel like you are in the Beatles' face, kind of, watching them just go from Liverpool to the Ed Sullivan Show in a rush, so then they can actually get there and perform the biggest, most iconic performances, in my opinion, ever. So yeah, and that one actually did a good amount of money. Like, not as good as the Beatles 3, but it did a lot of money since it was the music cinematic universe, the biggest franchise ever. And they knew that a sequel was on the way, which would come out in 2019. 2018, Sony made another universe solely on the side characters in the Beatles universe. And the first one would be about the Ruttles. Yeah, this movie would basically be the same thing as the movie that actually came out. And it was actually pretty good. Some people liked it, some people hated it. I personally liked it. I'm talking about the actual movie that came out here. But yeah, and that's basically one of the two movies that came out before the sequel to Beatles, The Ed Sullivan Show would come out in 2019. And they also have one movie that would come out before that, which is an animated one called The Beatles Into the Beatleverse. Beatles Into the Beatleverse would be like a really good Beatles movie, to the point where it actually won an Oscar. And it would have multiple versions of the Beatles, like the live action Beatles, the animated Beatles, both of them, the one from the show and the one from Yellow Submarine, the Ruttles, and also the animated Ruttles, some other people, like some Yellow Submarine people, and a lot of other characters from the Beatles universes, like the Beatles multiverse, I should say. Yeah, and yeah, won an Oscar for like best animated movie, animated feature. But yeah, it was pretty cool. I watched it. It was the best. The Beatles, Far From Liverpool, would follow the Beatles on their second world tour to multiple countries, and it would basically feel like a documentary again. And it would get to $1 billion because, one, it's in the music cinematic universe, and it's the Beatles. The craziest cash grab ever. Yeah, and there was also going to be another one that came out in 2021 that I will reveal to you later after these following messages.
The Warner Brothers Stan and Reg proudly present the Prefab Four, the semi-legendary Ruttles who made the 60s what they are today. New from Warner Brothers, 14 great tracks, 20 full-color pages of their lives, their loves, their music, their trousers, all on Warner Brothers.
In 1964, four men from Liverpool came to America and changed the world forever. The Beatles, one, the ultimate collection from the greatest band in history. All 27 of the Beatles' #1 hits available on one CD for the first time ever. Special packaging includes the famous Richard Avedon photos of the Beatles and a 32-page booklet.
Hey Jude, don't
The
make
Beatles,
it bad.
27 #1 songs that started a revolution and changed the sound of music forever. To order The Beatles 1, call the number on your screen or send $18.98 for CD or $11.98 for cassette plus $4.95 shipping and handling to the address below. Call now.
If you think superheroes like me can fight all your battles for you, think again. Voting for your local, state, and federal representative lets you choose who's on your side in all the issues we face today. From the little ones to the really big ones, too. But before you can vote, you need to register, so do it now. For registration forms or information on how to register, visit your local participating video store. Have a voice in your future. Register. And vote. And Tom Spider-Man sent you.
New Sonic Milk Ice from Topper. Multicolored milk ice filled with a jelly rod and coated with exploding shock rocks. Sonic the Hedgehog Milk Ice from Topper. It's truly shocking.
Before Sony released the last Beatles movie in the MCU trilogy, they released the sequel to The Ruttles, titled The Ruttles, P.S. I Need Food. It's basically just The Ruttles 2 that actually came out, with a couple tweaks and stuff, because it needs to. Like, the second one was made in, like, the 2000s or something. And then this one's made in 2021, so, yeah. And Sony made this, so everyone can get ready for the next movie that will come out, which is The Beatles, The Long and Winding Road, which will basically just be Get Back, but if it was as long as Let It Be. So it's like a weird mix between that. And it would make $1 billion. And it will probably be like one of the most earning movies ever. Probably beating Titanic. Everybody would go see it. It'd be a commercial success. And then they would announce another trilogy not even like a month later. Beatle, the Pete Best story, would be a movie of a character / person that didn't really need a movie, but since the success of the Beatles movies, Pete Best wanted a movie about himself. They were gonna make a movie about Stuart Sutcliffe, but they didn't, because that just got reworked into this movie. But when the movie came out, everybody joked on it. Like, to the point where Sony thought that everybody loved it, that they re-released it in theaters, and nobody watched it, basically. So technically, it flopped at the box office twice. Only a few movies can do that. and that is actually funny. After the failure of Pete Best, the story, they went to finish up the sequel to The Beatles Into the Beatleverse, and that sequel was actually pretty good. It got Oscar nominated. It didn't win, sadly, but it did get Oscar nominated, and that is equally as good as winning. It ended on a cliffhanger for the third one, The Beatles Beyond the Beatleverse. Since it's beyond, we actually do not know how beyond they'll go. Who knows, we might have Pink Floyd in the next one. Who knows. Back on the train of people that didn't really need their own movie, in 2024 we got Yoko Ono, which we actually didn't need. The only thing we actually got that was good in this movie was a cameo from John Lennon that was only like a second long, which it was really just a photo, and I said it took place after his death, so it sucked. Nobody liked it. This was meant to be like a movie about the Beatles' wives, but someone was on drugs or something and just thought, yeah, let's just make it about Yoko. Everybody would like that. Like, forget Linda, forget Patty Boyd. We just need a Yoko movie. And no one liked it. Everybody made fun of it. And that's where all the Beatles movies stand right now.
I feel good, I feel bad, I feel happy, I feel sad. Am I in love? I must be in love. Da-dee-da-da-da.